Welcome to Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Duke as a measuring stick for UVA basketball shows us where the focus needs to be. You're not going to win a lot of games when the four guys that you play in the post get a total of 9 rebounds in 80 minutes of playing time. And that's what we saw Monday night from UVA basketball. Third-ranked Duke somehow only won by 18 with a 41-21 advantage on the boards. Ron Sanchez said after, they really just made a statement on the glass. So many second chance points. That was the factor. That was after the 80-62 win for Duke. At one point in the first half, these numbers looked like they were video game numbers that they were still off. A 12-1 rebound advantage early in this game was 24-8 Duke on the rebounds at halftime. The Blue Devils had more offensive rebounds, 8 than Virginia had defensive rebounds, 7 in the first 20 minutes. The 14-point halftime lead was almost entirely second chance points. Um, and I give credit to Duke there. They're a better, more talented team this year. And they had offensive rebounds and second chance points, which is a reflection of effort. So the better team had more effort. If you're gonna upset a good team, you got to have more effort than them. More from Sanchez. We knew we had some disadvantages and on the glass, but we thought we would do a much better job than we did. That was unacceptable. Our interior players have to do a much better job rebounding the basketball. Um, I don't want to overstate the next thing about the solid backcourt play from UVA because this Duke team's good. Profile of a national title contender. Ken Palm has them second on offense, fourth on defense nationally. That's the kind of thing that says you better make the Final Four and you should win the championship. I mean, that's just my view of that. Virginia's team in 2019 had a similar profile. That said, I thought the Virginia backcourt was just as good as their counterparts on the other side, saying something there. Duke freshman Con Canupel had 17 points, and so did Isaiah Evans, 17 points. The UVA kids went on the radar of the bevy of the UVA scouts in attendance. There was a whole row of them last night in JPJ behind me, a couple rows behind me. Um, but Andrew Rohde had 15 points and 5 assists. Data Ames had 15 points, 3 assists. Isaac McNeely, 14 points. Those guys more than held their own against the Duke backcourt. Sanchez here, I could not have asked for more from Andrew, from Day Day, or from IMAC. Those three guys showed up and they met the challenge and played well. The weakness was obviously up front. Start with Jacob Kofi, the guy we talked about in the preseason as looking like a surefire future NBA guy. He put up a double bagel. No points, no rebounds in 17 minutes. That is hard to do. And on top of the stunning lack of counting numbers, he was constantly eaten alive in one-on-one matchups with the Duke freshman Cooper Flagg. Now, obviously, Cooper Flagg is going to be the number one pick of the draft. He was trouble for the Olympic team last year in those scrimmages. But that said, if Kofi thinks he's an NBA guy, that's your measure right there. He had 0 points and 0 boards. Duke coach John Shire kept running sets in the second half that got Flagg the ball with space to operate against Kofi. And our freshman offered no resistance. Flagg counting numbers for the night: 17 points, 14 boards. Um, he messed around and got a double-double, and I didn't think he even looked that good last night. But he was head and shoulders better than our guy Kofi. Blake Buchanan, the former four-star prep recruit, he's a sophomore, had 2 points and 3 boards in 21 minutes. This time last year, I was telling anybody who would listen that all Buchanan needed to do was hit the weight room, and he'd be really good this year. And because once he did, he got stronger. He was going to be able to, secure those rebounds, fight in the post, that kind of thing. A year later, he's still not strong enough to play night in, night out in the ACC. Elijah Saunders, the team's second leading scorer, finished with 7 points. They were a mirage. He didn't score his first bucket until we were down 25 with less than 10 minutes to go in the game. He had 3 rebounds in 23 minutes. He has a tendency to do that, put up numbers when game's already over. It doesn't matter. The bright spot up front was Anthony Robinson. Continues to be the bright spot up front. Robinson started getting minutes when Saunders went down with a lower leg injury a couple weeks back and had to miss some games. And Robinson, all of a sudden, he's been a revelation. This game, he had 7 points and 3 boards in 19 minutes. A manly block. You saw it on ESPN all day on the dunk attempt by Flagg, the poster dunk attempt by Flagg. Turned out to be a reverse poster. In his last 5, Robinson is averaging 16.8 minutes a game, 8.6 points, 4.2 rebounds. Holy crap, if we could get that every night from one of our bigs. And he's not even getting the minutes he should be getting. Thinking more minutes going forward. Um, Here's the quote from Sanchez. Anthony's improving, so his energizing plays in the second half. We needed more of that. Uh, yeah, maybe give him more minutes. He only had 11 minutes in the second half. Kofi had 10 and didn't do anything with them. Here's the another quote from Sanchez that's a little frustrating to hear. Anthony's shortcoming right now is that he's young. You can't speed up Mother Nature. He's learning to be an impactful defender. We had a couple of miscommunications when he was on the floor. That's the time the game is a little too fast for him, but he's improving. He's getting better, and it's a great opportunity for him. Now, it might just be me, but I would take a miscommunication or two over a guy getting eaten alive and otherwise giving you literally nothing. And that's, again, that's Jacob Kofi. Make him earn his minutes. So what we learned last night about Virginia in that loss, and the game was over pretty early, unfortunately. Virginia tried to hang around, at least didn't get blown out entirely. I've been writing of late how I want to see this team stay together, get a chance to run it back next year. But after the measuring stick that you get playing a team that I think can very well cut down the nets in April, we see the holes that need to be addressed going forward. It's all in the front court. Buchanan is Jekyll and Hyde, and more often is Hyde than Jekyll. Um, Kofi is too soft on offense, too willing to settle for contested mid-range jumpers, doesn't fight around the rim. Going back 10 games now, he's averaging 5.3 points, 3.8 rebounds, and 19.8 minutes per game, 42% shooting. And then on D, he's nothing. He's a statue at best. Saunders is also soft on offense. He's shooting 50.4% in the paint, 58.7% at the rim, both registering the bottom third of all players nationally, not even just, the guys that are post players, and he's not much of a presence on defense. Assuming Sanchez is retained and don't shoot the messenger here, there is momentum in that direction. The front court needs immediate attention. I'm not saying you necessarily cut bait on any of those guys, but you'll have some open scholarships to play with. Tate Murray's a senior. Christian Bliss is clearly on his way out. I can't imagine TJ Power being around next year. If you keep the backcourt core of McNeely, Rhodey, and Ames together, get Elijah Gertrude back and healthy, plus Ishan Sharma, the freshman who's shown flashes of brilliance this year, in my opinion, you're set rotation-wise in the backcourt. I build my front court around Robinson, and whoever among Buchanan, Kofi, and Saunders decides to show up, step up, grow. If none of them do, there's the NIL transfer portal. There's already 3 open scholarships to use in the form of the scholarships now being used by Murray, Bliss, and Power. And if any of those guys think that it's too hard to play the pack line and mover blocker, those guys, being the ones I mentioned, Buchanan, Kofi, and Saunders, then you have extra scholarships to use to try to find some guys to play in the front court for you. I'm getting ahead of myself there, I admit. Still 5 regular season games left for this team with road games at UNC and Wake, the next 2, and then you have a home game with Clemson as the third of the those. I mean, you got tough games there. UNC is very much on the periphery of the NCAA tournament bid race. Wake is probably in a good place. Clemson's very much in a good place. So these 3 games are going to be tough, obviously, and 2 of them are on the road. Clemson at home, doesn't matter where you play in them right now. They're playing so well. You got to put this one with Duke in the rear view and get back out there and win some games down the stretch. Sanchez was asked what he needs to do to get his team's attention and do that. He says, I just got to make sure I deliver the right message to the guys, which is that we are playing good basketball. We didn't play it last night. He said we didn't play it tonight. But that doesn't take away from the good basketball that we've been playing. We have to understand that. We have to recognize the things that we did well, celebrate those, identify the things that we did poorly, attack those immediately, and then prepare for the next opponent. That's what you got to do. You got to, Duke is more talented. It's a team built to win a championship this year. This Virginia team, unfortunately, is not. It's building for the future. And, I think you take that to heart and see if you can get back out there this weekend and give UNC a run down in Chapel Hill. We know who UVA Athletics is working with in its basketball coach search. We learned this because of a source giving us some inside info. I'm recording this on Tuesday. It was on Monday. I obtained a copy of an invoice submitted to UVA Athletics on January 9th by the Atlanta-based Parker Executive Services. Now, the invoice was for $45,000 for what appeared to be 3 months of work, according to a source. It's the second invoice, basically. There was an invoice for 3 months of work from October to January, another 3 months from January to April, which will be the end of the process. By April, you'll have a coach. So $90,000 is the amount of money being paid to this search firm. Now, let me be clear. I got one email from a reader today who said, "I can't believe that the AD can't just do it herself, and the president can't do it himself. You know, what are they doing? What's their job? Why aren't they? They're going to hire this firm might hire somebody we don't like. No, the firm is not hiring anybody. Okay, first off, the firm is being used to aid in the search, and let's talk about what that means. Um, there's a search committee that has been working with Carla Williams the last few months to uh, identify potential coaching candidates, bandy about who would be the best potential fits at UVA, including Ron Sanchez, the interim coach, who's getting a lot of recent love within that committee the last couple of weeks for the progress we've seen from this year's current roster. Um, but this search committee is there. They're identifying these candidates, again, vetting them, kind of so to speak, amongst themselves. And then what this Parker Executive Services does is when the UVA folks, the UVA athletic folks say, okay, XYZ coaches, we want to do more research on them. We want background checks on them. We want some basic things done in terms of, just searching their, making sure their job histories match up. I mean, you can't just assume these things. Do a social media post search and make sure that, I don't know, that there's no neo-Nazi love from 10 years ago somewhere that we didn't hear about. All this kind of stuff, all this, checking the doing a deep dive, crossing the I's, dotting the T's, all that fun stuff. That's what you hire a search firm for. And it's not just UVA doing this. I went into great detail on the story, and it kind of frustrates me that I got emails from people saying that they, read the story but didn't read the story. This search firm works with programs across country, and not just in basketball. I mean, they're helping colleges. North Carolina State's hiring a new chancellor, and this group is helping in that effort. So it's whatever. It's what it is. Um, so it all dovetails too with. I mean, it just goes in line with what I was the one who asked Carla Williams October 18th at the press conference where Tony Bennett had just announced his retirement. So what's the next step here? And she said, we're going to do a search for a coach. And that was October 18th. 3 months later would be January 18th. This invoice was actually submitted January 9th. So maybe that's just their timeline for Parker Executive Services timeline for getting this invoice out. But again, it's more of those. This is the kind of knowledge that just shows, yeah, UVA is doing all the due diligence it needs to do. This isn't just, in fact, I think it should be good news for anybody out there who reads this and thinks it's not good news. This is good news that UVA isn't just doing a fly-by-night search. This isn't just the AD scribbling on her notebook a couple of names and then decide to name somebody. This is something where we're going to get a person who is, thoroughly vetted. We've done the research on their history. We've got people talking to their, people who've known them, their bosses, former bosses, coaches who've worked with them, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to end up with somebody who not only doesn't fit UVA, but also, I mean, there's things you don't want, like oh, we didn't know about the domestic violence arrest from 20 years ago. You don't want that kind of thing popping up. So that's why you hire one of these firms. And Parker Executive Services has a track record, good track record in this field. We're doing it the right way. Is the final message out of this little particular bit of news. Here, some ideas on the one tweak I would have UVA basketball interim coach Ron Sanchez work on if he were to get the UVA job full time. One lesson would be succession planning. Sanchez and Tony Bennett recruited the roster for this year's squad with what both said before the season was a 2-year development plan in mind. The key reason for that being they had to because they lost two guys in the NBA and had to start over almost from scratch in terms of proven guys. Now, coming from where this 2024-2025 cycle started, grain of salt, but you'd like what you're seeing based on what been seeing of late in terms of next year's roster. Transfers, Day-Day Ames and Elijah Saunders look like good fits. Saunders could be a better fit, but the Day-Day Ames certainly of late has really come on. Seems like the light has gone off for him. Freshman recruits Jacob Kofi and Ishan Sharma have shown us flashes. I like Sharma better. I like his flashes better. Kofi gets more minutes. Redshirt freshman Anthony Robinson has been a revelation of late. Blake Buchanan can be Jekyll or Hyde, but he's largely improved over his uneven freshman season. Andrew Rohde has become a really good college point guard. And I think I may be understating that. Isaac McNeely has been putting up big numbers over his last 7 games, right around 17 points a game. Actually, over his last 8 games, right around 17 points a game. Give this roster, this is my argument, give this roster another year together playing Tony Bennett basketball. They'd be a year older, a year wiser, another year in the Mike Curtis physical development program. And I can see them doing some damage next year in the ACC. Now, they may not get the chance to do that. They had a really awful November, December, and January. Tony Bennett did not do Ron Sanchez any favors by giving him 3 games in the month of November against teams that are now in the top 10 in the AP poll. Um, Last night, Virginia lost to Duke, another top 10 loss. There was that disaster of a trip out west with double-digit losses to 2 teams in Stanford and Cal. You shouldn't have even lost too much less by double digits. Um, from there, lately playing better. 5 wins in the last 8, 4 in the last 6. The that one of the losses in there, a 1 point loss to Virginia Tech that probably should have been a win. You look back at the SMU game. SMU the game in Charlottesville made 3 threes in the last 25 seconds, one with less than a second to go to win by 2. There's a couple games in there that Virginia, you get the wins, and Virginia is in the discussion at least for an NCAA tournament at large bid. Not happening, so it is what it is. Um, Virginia's playing its best basketball right now, and this is the time of year you want to be playing your best basketball. Might be too late, is what it is. Ron Sanchez addressed this after the win at Virginia Tech. I hate the Saturday Monday double because it's hard to do everything you got to do, and then you have 2 games in 3 days. But after the win at Virginia Tech, he said, I could want these guys to be where they are now back in November, but you need time to do that. Those 2 months, doesn't matter what I do, 3 months, whatever it was. I can't speed that process up. You cannot speed up Mother Nature. Some things require time and experience. And you can say it's an excuse, but it's the truth. Tony Bennett basketball is a mix of the mover blocker offense, a read and react system that relies on timing and touch. The pack line defense is everything you do in the pack line defense is 180 degrees from what you learned growing up. You do everything the opposite. It takes time, it takes reps to get good in that system, but once you do, it's a very good system. There are lots of banners hanging in JPJ to prove that. 6 ACC regular season championships in the Tony Bennett era in an 11-year period. The most recent, just 2 short years ago, I get emails from people arguing with me that one guy went into this we had an extended back and forth over the concept of what he called abject failure in the last 5 years. Abject failure is not an ACC regular season championship. Virginia didn't win a lot of those until the last few years. 2019 national championship notwithstanding too. Um, the It doesn't come easy, and that's actually an argument. The fact that the Tony Bennett basketball does not come easy is an argument used by Bennett critics, who are now Sanchez critics, given realities of the NIL transfer portal era. So my answer here is okay. You can either stick with it or cut bait and start over with a different way of playing basketball. And that's clearly kind of where we are right now in this UVA basketball coaching search. My answer to that one is I don't know. But let me be clear, that decision is way above my pay grade. But if it were up to me, I would give Ron Sanchez more rope here. Um, I know that the search committee that's been working with Carla Williams and the university has become more favorable to Sanchez in the last few weeks from what they're seeing in terms of development of the team, but also development of him as a coach. Um, and also the other part of this is, I've been reporting that, the word had been getting to me that the search committee is like, hey, we want to splash higher. We want one of these big name coaches. And, now maybe reality's sitting in that they're not going to get one of those big name coaches. Ron Sanchez, of course, is the exact opposite of a splash hire, no matter what you do. He is very low key, understated. His one head coaching experience, he was 72 and 78 in 5 seasons at Charlotte. That's not even on the level of some of the second tier candidates on this coaching search list that I've been reporting on. The one advantage he has is incumbency. The track record from the Bennett era and his experience recruiting at a place like Virginia, which is hard to recruit to. From the academic side, the basketball program is great. You got all those banners hanging up there. You have a gym of a gym in JPJ. But yeah, it can be hard sometimes to get the kids you want to get into school. Um, so suggestion, Tony Bennett basketball with tweaks. The mistake that I'm attributing to Tony Bennett, to be fair and clear, that has us where we are now is the fundamental misread that I think Bennett made in terms of succession planning in the NIL transfer portal era. To be fair, this year's misread was not Bennett's first. Think back to 2021, 2022. The year before, the second year of COVID, but we actually got to play an NCAA tournament that year. That team had some NBA dudes, some of the best NBA guys we've produced from our program. Trey Murphy, Sam Hauser, Jay Huff. Um, the season got ended shorter of expectations because if you remember that team got bounced out of the ACC tournament not by losing, they actually won their first game. But somebody contracted COVID. The entire team had to go into individual quarantine for a week. Nothing for a week. They basically got on a plane, got off the bus, and had to play a game with no practice, no conditioning, anything else. You're going to lose a game that way. I mean, you can say it's an excuse. That's what the reality is. So that team didn't live up to expectation. They did win the ACC regular season title. Um, but then after that group left, had to start over. And Tony Bennett scrambled. He and his staff put together a group that included, as the lead guys, Jaden Gardner and Armand Franklin. Now, that group went to the NIT its first year together. Year two, it won the ACC regular season title again. So, second time in 3 years, completely different group. And their departures forced Bennett to going into last season, 2023-2024, to have to go back to the portal for reinforcements. Now, this is where the mistake was made. I will argue. I will contend, I guess. Instead of finding more developmental guys who could help you now, but also help you even more later. He went for 1 year portal guys. Got good production out of two guys who were grad seniors, Jake Groves and Jordan Miner. But with those guys just being 1 year guys, and then Ryan Dunn and Reese Beekman both leaving with eligibility left to go to the NBA, that left the cupboard completely bare going into this season. Now, hard to argue with Ryan Dunn and Reese Beekman both deciding to forego Dunn actually had 2 years of eligibility left. Beekman would have had one left to go to the NBA. Dunn played in the NBA All-Star game on Sunday night. Reese Beekman has gone from the G League to feels like a full-time gig with the Brooklyn Nets since he got traded from Golden State back about a month ago. So for those keeping score at home, that's 1 year of bumps and bruises. An NIT invite, that was back in 2021, 2022, ahead of an ACC title. Then a first four bid that was hanging on, trying to squeeze the most that you could out of that roster. And then now we're back to bumps and bruises. And if we'll be lucky this year to get an NIT bid. Let's be fair about that. 13 and 13 right now with a tough schedule coming up. You got to be over 500 to get that NIT bid. Don't know if that's going to happen, but there's a similarity to 2021, 2022. The people who write the checks for UVA athletics aren't going to want to settle for 1 year bust and then 1 year boom. We want more consistency, right? So, um, where we are now, because I've made all this case, if you just make that tweak and succession plan better, things will be better. Yeah, where we are now, Ron Sanchez still has to earn his job, and his players have to earn their ability to play together again. New coach, I would assume in this NIL transfer portal era, would probably bring his own roster in too, or largely bring his own roster in. So they're playing for their coach, they're playing for each other, the guys are, and it's fair to assume that they were all pretty well aware of that. Um, Sanchez talked about this after the Virginia Tech game. He said, the one thing about this group is that going through adversity and hard times presses you. It presses you forward in order for you to become who you're supposed to become. Society today is afraid of hard times. I think it's an important thing to say. Everybody wants a trophy, but nobody wants to pay the price to get it. You know, if he doesn't get the job, he's telling us the truth. You don't have to like the truth, but it's the truth. You have to go through difficulties in order for you to arrive anywhere. We are thankful for every loss we took, every heartbreak, every long trip, because those experiences have had to be had, and so that then you can persevere forward. You know, if you hear him say that, read the quote on the story that I wrote about this, and you see that he says this, and you don't think that this is a guy that should be representing the University of Virginia, I don't know what else I can tell you. Virginia Tech could buy out basketball coach Mike Young if it wants to. We were told last week by a person with knowledge of Virginia Tech athletics who I'm convinced would know that the school is probably stuck with its basketball coach Mike Young because it doesn't have the money to buy out Young's contract. So I wanted to check that out. I got a copy of Young's contract from Virginia Tech via a Freedom of Information Act request. I got that today. And after looking at it, I don't know that what I was told last week is accurate. Mike Young, per the contract extension that he signed in 2021, 2 years after his original deal in 2019, uh, he's only under contract under this extension for 2 more years through the end of the 2026-2027 season. His salary for the next 2 years is $3 million a year, and the buyout after March 15th of this year drops to $4 million. Now, I'm not saying Whit Babcock, the AD at Virginia Tech, wants to get rid of Young, who is on the verge of missing the NCAA tournament for the third straight year. But if he wants to, he can, and it won't cost much, at least from my read of things. Now, keep in mind here, a buyout isn't due in a lump sum, and the language on how the remaining money could be parceled out allows the athletics department to space out the payments according to the payment schedule for the duration of the contract. Basically, they can keep paying him, the way they've been paying him, just less money actually, um, for the duration. But to me, if the school were to decide to pay off Young in a lump sum, $4 million would not be viewed by me as being daunting for an athletics program with an annual athletics budget in the $130 million to $140 million range. Now, when I wrote about this last week, I also wrote about the Brent Pry factor. The issue with the football coach Brent Pry, whose seat is also getting warmer, if it's not already, toasty. 3 underachieving seasons since he signed in 2021. His total compensation, I got a copy of his contract also through this FOIA request, will be at 4.75 million for 2025 and 2026, each of those 2 years. It increases to 5 million for the final year of what's currently a 6-year deal in 2027. Now, per the details of his contract, if he were to be fired after the 2025 season, he would be due 70% of the value of his total compensation for 2026. So that'd be $3.325 million and 50% of the total compensation for 2027, which will be $2.5 million. That's a total of $5.825 million. That's rather, to me, AD friendly. The reason I say that, context on that, I have done all this work already on Tony Elliott, the UVA football coach's contract. He was also hired in 2021. He's also coming off of 3 very much underachieving seasons. He's also under contract through 2027. So after the 2025 season, the school would owe him the entirety of his agreed upon total compensation through the end of the deal, which I estimate to be $9.475 million. The entirety of that, not 70% of this and 50% of that, the entirety of it. Now, Elliott isn't set to get paid at the level of Pry. Elliott's deal has his total compensation for this year, 2025, and next year, 2026, at 3.9 million per year, increasing modestly to 4.05 million for the 2027 season. Now, there's an odd feature to Elliott's contract. His term ends on May 31st, 2028. So that, is 6 months after the end of the 2027 football regular season. Pry's deal is set to end on December 1st, 2027, which is more logical as far as deals go of this nature. My read of the Elliott UVA contract is that it calls for him to be eligible for 2.55 million in supplemental compensation effective April 1st, 2028. I may be reading that wrong, but if it were to become an issue, you can bet that his lawyer would take some issue with that in court. That's why I'm factoring an additional 2.55 million into his contract. UVA folks might want to clean up that language. I'm not a lawyer, but what I see there as far as that goes.